Monsieur le Président.
The President.
Monsieur le Premier Vice-président,
First Vice President of the Senate of the French Republic, Chairpersons of the European Affairs Committees, Presidents of committees and dear MEPs, I would like to welcome you all to the Senate of the French Republic for this Conference of the Parliamentary Committees for Union Affairs, which is called the COSAC. This is the starting point of the French Presidency of the European Union in its parliamentary side. The Senate has both the advantage and the privilege of inaugurating the French presidency in its parliamentary form and to conclude the presidency as well in May with a conference on migration. Now, this high responsibility has, in fact, a reason behind it. You know, no doubt, the French electoral calendar, and the Senate is the only high-level institution in the Republic, which is an elected body, which does not have any elections planned for the first half of 2022. And so we will be able to ensure the continuity of our presidency and cover the full 6 months of the first 6 months of the year. The COVID pandemic and the health constraints that it has brought have upset a number of our plans. This was the case also for other presidencies that have been held since the beginning of 2020. I would like to thank the presidents of the Committee on European Affairs of the National Assembly here in Paris and the president of the Senate, so Madame Sabine Tillet and Mr. Jean-François Rapin, who have done everything that was possible to ensure that the COSAC could meet here today in good conditions and that things could run as smoothly as possible. I would also like to welcome the delegations who are present here today in the Senate's hemicycle, and we're very pleased that you have insisted on coming to Paris, despite the difficulties that you were confronted with. I'd also like to warmly welcome other delegations from member states who have joined us by video conference, and you will be able to see them later on in the proceedings. I would also like to address my welcome to other delegations from the European Economic Area and delegations from candidate countries or other members of other countries from the Eastern Partnership who have wanted to participate and follow our work. All of these delegations who are contributing to bringing together this large European family at a time in this world where a number of predatory energies are at work. It's a great opportunity to come together. In these present times, it is more important than ever not to be putting democracy on ice, in inverted commas. There is no state of emergency that can enable or could justify anyone trying to get around parliamentary representation or treating it with disregard. Your mobilization here to come along to the COSAC meeting has shown that we are determined altogether to defend our common heritage, which is parliamentary action. Ladies and gentlemen, the loss of David Sassoli on the 11th of January has put the whole of European parliamentary into a period of sadness. The Senate has paid homage to him on Wednesday, and I know that we will be also marking this event at the National Assembly on Tuesday. Now, on behalf of all of us here at the COSAC, and we would like to extend our parliament, the national parliament's honour to the memory of David Sassoli. He incarnated the values which are so dear to us: democracy, parliamentary action, pluralism of debates, and liberty. In defending these values, we stand together, the national parliaments and the European parliaments, and we speak with one voice. I would ask you now to observe a moment of silence in the memory of Mr. Sassoli. Thank you. Colleagues, this year, COSAC celebrates its 33rd anniversary. Now, it's adulthood, but it's still not quite mature. In fact, once you are reach that stage of 33, you actually think that maturity is coming much later on. Our colleagues in the national parliaments who were so visionary back in 1989 to create COSAC, and I would actually refer here to our French colleague, President Laurent Fabius, they would hardly recognize today's COSAC in 2022. The COSAC that we have today has actually seen its existence noted in the European treaties. We are now able to hold debates on the European policies, and they're still very useful. We have been able to debate the large guidelines of the French Presidency of the European Union, for example, in your first session in our first session today. But I've already said this, but I believe that the COSAC isn't actually taking advantage of all of our opportunities through the treaties, be it in the debates that we hold or in our collective action. We could actually adopt our contributions and address our comments to the European institutions and address issues which are of interest to the citizens of Europe. And that's what we're going to be looking at during the second session today. The second session will look at the working methods, which are sometimes very detailed, but often and technical, but often important. It really is vital for the work of the COSAC, and we'll be working along with you during the period of the French presidency, with you all and with the European Parliament. My dear colleagues, 20 years ago, we first saw the euro in our wallets. It was the first time that the euro came into circulation for European citizens. More than 340 million Europeans out of the inhabitants of the European Union, which count some 450 million, 340 million of them use the euro, and other European citizens would like to adopt the euro. It is the euro which has managed to resist the numerous crises and has become a symbol of European identity. And this is going to be looked at in the last roundtable, our third roundtable, which will also see the presence of Madame Christine Lagarde, President of the European Central Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, the national parliaments, along with the European Parliament, are really the beating heart of Europe. COSAC is here to remind us that parliaments have a collective role to play within the European Union. And the collective is important. It's important when at this stage, in these days, when we're opening the COSAC session. A well-known 20th century geographer said when Europe was actually facing tensions and divisions and sometimes confrontations, he wrote that Europe is too large to be united, but it is too small to be divided. Therein lies our destiny. It was Alexandre Dumas who said in the Three Musketeers, all for one for all. And we are the link. We are that vital link between the European Parliament and the national parliaments. Let's make sure that we find the correct balance to work together. I wish you every success for the COSAC. Thank you very much for your attention.
Je vais maintenant donner la parole pour introduire nos travaux successivement au président Jean-François Rapin, président de la Commission des Affaires européennes du Sénat, puis à Madame la Présidente Sabine Thiellet. Monsieur le Président.
Sorry, I'm now giving the floor to Mr. Rapin. President of the Senate, First Vice President of the Senate, ladies and gentlemen, Presidents of the members of, Chairman of the Committees on European Affairs, it is now my turn as well to welcome you today and to express my pleasure, my intense pleasure to welcome you here to the Senate physically for those who are present and also virtually for those of you who are attending from far. So welcome to this meeting of the COSAC. Now, this has gotten a particular significance today because for the first time for 2 years, we're holding an interparliamentary meeting which is not solely a video conference. Now, indeed, the crisis is still here, it's still with us. It has stopped many delegations from coming to Paris, but I can look around and I can see that we do have parliamentarians from the far-flung areas of Europe, and that is the first sign of a return to normal life. And I think this is also a good augur that we will hopefully be able to come back together again for later meetings during the French presidency. So the COSAC is actually coming here to the Senate is actually coming back to our origins. You might not forget, you might remember back then we were talking about European control of the European activities and the participation of national parliaments in European affairs. Now, our concerns are still valid today, and we are going to be looking later on at a session which will focus on our working methods to see how we can, how effective we are in our work. So what has changed since '89 is that we no longer look at the national parliaments in the same manner. We want to ensure that they have a role to play in constructing Europe, and that is what that might have made some people smile back then when we first mentioned it. That's no longer the case. We still believe that there is a certain democratic deficit in the European Union. That the European Parliament's rise has not actually enabled us to avoid a democratic problem for the citizens of Europe. The treaties themselves have actually looked at our role in the good functioning of the proper functioning of the European Union. So no one now questions the role of the COSAC. The European Parliament, or along with the European Parliament, we represent our elected representatives of the European citizens, and we are closest to the grassroots. There is no democracy within the European Union and no adhesion of European citizens to the European Union without our body, without the COSAC, and therefore the COSAC has an important role to play. It brings together parliamentarians from different member states, those who know the European issues, those who are working on dossiers, those who know the decision-making processes at European level, and those who actually now know each other, because we have regular meetings and exchanges with each other through the COSAC. We have a real responsibility in the decision-making process of the European Union, and I hope that today will enable us to make a step further in that direction. Before we start our work today, however, I would like to thank our Slovene colleagues for the work that they carried out during their presidency, which was marked by the setting up of the Conference on the Future of Europe. And also, I would also like to thank our colleagues in the Troika, who have also participated in preparing the work that we are going to be getting into today. We're also very pleased to welcome to our conference 3 new participants: Mr. Anton Ofreiter, Chair of the Bundestag's Committee on European Affairs. He's with us here today. Mr. Raymond Katjoulé, who's the Vice President of the Estonian Parliament on European Affairs, who is here as well. Welcome, sir. And also Mr. David Smoczak, who's from the European Affairs Committee, the Senate from the Czech Republic, who's with us on video conference and who was at the Troika meeting this morning. So, colleagues, welcome to you all. Let me now give the floor to Madame Sabine Thiellet, Chair of the Committee on European Affairs of the National Assembly. Thank you very much, Chairman. Let me give the floor now to Madame Thiellet. Madame Thiellet from the Committee on European Affairs from the National Assembly. You have the floor. Chairman of the Senate, Vice President of the Senate, ladies and gentlemen, presidents of and members of the committees on European affairs and member states, please allow me to welcome you all to Paris. This is a welcome I extend to all delegations. I must say that I'm very pleased that we're able to be together here, partially in part of you are here in person, and I think that's very important because politics is also a matter of human relations. It's a real honor for us to be able to assume the French presidency of the COSAC along with Jean-François Rapin at this key moment for the European Union. We are all hoping that 2022 will be the year that we will see an end to the crisis on a health level, but also we hope that economically and socially we will come to see an end to our crisis. We're hoping that we were hoping that with the vaccinations and the recovery plan that Europe has actually been active with the Fit for 55 and the strategic compass that was mentioned earlier. The European Union has shown that they are able to plan for a future with ambition and in strategic areas such as ecology and defence. However, these events we've got to recognise that these events are actually being carried out with a certain amount of indifference amongst the general population. The media are passing the message much too little. They're not actually passing over, telling us what is happening in Europe or in our national assemblies. They're giving the impression that the European members of Parliament do not have any impact on their daily lives. This is also seen during the elections for the European Parliament, where we see a very low turnout. And despite everything that we've seen in 2019, we've seen that in France, we have on average about 50% of the turnout for the European elections, which is actually very little given the impact that the European policies have upon the daily lives of our citizens. We who are here today have a role to play. We have got to ensure that the situation changes, as my colleague Jean-François Rapin has underscored. And I am convinced that as a member of the national representation, as a member of the national parliaments, we are actually in the field. We're working with people within our constituencies. Every meeting is important, and every meeting should be an opportunity for us to actually stress the role of the European institutions and our own role, not just within the capital cities, but also around our countries, looking at local issues, national issues, and European issues together. And I believe that we don't do this enough. If we want to actually overcome this gap, we've got to go out to the citizens and inform them, and in particular when we are dealing with very complex issues. One of the key missions of a politician's mission is to actually make our choices understandable for all. That is important within our democracy. And during the French presidency, we are going to be looking at two themes which are very important to me, which is the role of national parliaments and also the role of European values, which are so closely linked to the ideas that we have behind underscoring the rule of law.
It is the guarantee of mutual trust among member states as we respect the fundamental rights of each and every citizen. This is a vital issue that must be discussed by national parliaments and the European Parliament. That is our duty. We are aware of our constitutional identities, and together we must strive to find complementarity and a common approach, even when this is difficult. I hope that our exchanges will be fruitful, and I believe we have a lot to share today. After discussing procedural items, we will have a session with Mr. Clément Beaune, the Secretary of State to the Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs. Then we will mention the new working methods within COSAC. We believed that they needed to be updated in order to give greater visibility to the discussions we'll be having today. And lastly, we will have a session with Christine Lagarde, President President of the European Central Bank, on our single currency, the euro, which is one of the most tangible symbols of the bringing together of European citizens. I wish you a very fruitful discussions, and I thank you for being here once again. Thank you very much, Madam President. Before we begin our work on the procedural issues, I will first of all give the floor to President Rapin. Ladies and gentlemen, chairpersons, dear colleagues, before we begin, I would like to give you some practical guidelines for those taking part in the session in Paris. As regards interpretation, you'll find French on channel 1, English on channel 2, German on channel 3, Italian on channel 4, and Spanish on channel 5. When video conference speakers take the floor, I invite you to use the headsets available to you. I see some of you have already made use of them. Sound will be broadcast within the hemicycle. However, we are obliged to broadcast it at a low level. Lastly, I'd like to recall that masks are obligatory within the Senate due to the health conditions that we're all aware of. Now, let's move on to procedural items. The presidential troika met this morning, and we approved the agenda of the Kosak, which you have received. I therefore propose that we adopt it. Are there any objections in the room? I see none. Are there any objections online? I see none. It is so decided. The agenda is adopted. The Troika this morning adopted the outline of the 37th COSAC biannual report, which was circulated to you prior to this meeting. We focused the report on 3 issues: the role of national parliaments, the rule of law, the Conference on the Future of Europe, the plenary session of which should take place in the spring. You will receive a questionnaire that you should send back before the 30th of January so that we can outline the report of the upcoming COSAC meeting on the 4th and 5th of March. Due to the elections in France, we have several time constraints. We approved the plenary meeting of March's agenda this morning. It will allow us to take stock of the French Presidency of the Council. It will allow us to discuss the European project and the end of the crisis, to address the issue of climate change and the energy transition. It will also allow us to discuss the outcomes of the Conference on the Future of Europe, and also to discuss the work of the working groups, if we agree to establish them today. We have received several requests from third parties who wish to take part in our assembly. The Swiss Federal Assembly, the House of Lords in the UK, the Georgian Parliament, and for the COSAC plenary, the Icelandic Parliament. The Troika has accepted these requests. These procedural items are therefore closed. If anyone wishes to take the floor, please raise your hand. I see no requests for the floor in the room. Are there any requests for the floor online? I see none. Now, this hybrid meeting is a first, so I'll ask for your indulgence. I'll suspend the session for several minutes. We will resume our work at 10 with the presentation of the priorities of the French Presidency. We're early. We will wait for Minister Bonn to arrive, and in the meantime, I invite you to make the most of the conference room. Thank you very much.
Mesdames et messieurs les présidents,
Ladies and gentlemen, chairpersons, we will now resume our work with the first session. Welcome, Minister Bonn, parliamentarians, dear colleagues. Our first session will be on the priorities of the French Presidency of the Council of the European Union. It's a pleasure to welcome Mr. Bonn, the Secretary of State to the Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs. I thank him for coming here to present the priorities of the French Presidency of the Council. Before giving him the floor, I will first give the floor to my colleague, Madame Sabine Tillet, who's chair of the National Assembly European Affairs Committee. Now, any speakers in the room will be using the microphones at the end of your rows. Thank you very much, ministers, Mr. Bonn, chairpersons, dear colleagues. The French presidency is happening at a time when the needs of Europe are higher than ever before. The migration issues, climate change, trade, all of these issues call into question our capacity to act, and we can only address these issues if we agree on a common path of action, which will require national parliaments. It is the role of chairpersons to lead this, and the French presidency will be leading discussions on agreements and on major issues regarding our future. For example, the Asylum and Migration Pact, which was presented a year and a half ago, the discussions upon which are still ongoing. We wish to see a system which would show greater solidarity among the various countries of the European Union. I also wish to focus on social Europe with workers on digital platforms and also discussions on a minimum wage, how to ensure these issues without calling into question social issues, and how to ensure collective action. Digital trade is also a major issue for us, and beyond the targets of the DSA and the DMA, how do we ensure that European companies can be competitive in this field? Now, the last issue is the transition towards carbon neutrality. Europe is at the forefront of the fight against climate change and has a target for decarbonizing the European economy by 2050. The tools will be made available within the package presented in July. The carbon adjustment mechanism, the energy reform, and a emissions market have been identified as potential tools to this end. Discussions must involve these issues. Countries must discuss their energy mix in order to overcome these challenges. The Commission made a significant proposal several days ago on taxonomy, on green energy, including nuclear energy, as well as transitional energies. How can Europe ensure that investments are sufficient to ensure this energy transition? And what is the view of national parliaments regarding all of these issues, and how can we best support these efforts? And lastly, the rule of law must also be at the core of our concerns. Our conference will discuss the possibility of creating a working group on the issue of European values later on. The aim is to discuss among national and European parliaments on these issues and to analyze the achievements and difficulties to reach a common understanding. We are convinced that in better sharing our various approaches, we will be able to strengthen our common foundation, and we believe that COSAC is an irreplaceable platform of dialogue among national parliaments and the European Parliament, and therefore is a perfect platform to make these issues more visible to European citizens. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I now give the floor to Mr. Clément Beaune, who is the Secretary of State to the Minister for Europe, responsible for European Affairs, and he will be in charge of leading the French presidency. You have the floor. Mr. Chair, Jean-François Rapin, Chair of the National Assembly European Affairs Committee, Sabine Tillet, Chairpersons, parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to first pay tribute in your company as parliamentarians and on behalf of the French government to the President David Sassoli, the late President of the European Parliament, who was a tireless defender of the common European project. Until the end, he defended democracy and the values that are at the heart of the European project. I thank you for inviting me to take part in this first meeting this morning of the Conference of Parliamentary Committees for European Affairs at the outset of this French presidency of the Council in its parliamentarian dimension. As a member of the government, in view of the French presidency, it's a pleasure to welcome you, parliamentarians, here in this emblematic forum, which is a symbol of our parliamentary life, of our democracy, which is the French Senate. It recalls the importance of European discussions, which are the cornerstone of our common history. The Luxembourg Palace was inspired by Florentine architecture of the Pitti Palace in particular. This is a symbol of our common and shared heritage. Now, I will be discussing the main priorities of the French presidency of the European Union. But first of all, I will be highlighting how important your participation will be. On two fronts. As parliamentarians, of course, you are closer to the reality on the ground. You work within your national parliaments to address major issues which are at the heart of our current ongoing discussions. You analyze, you warn, you vote on issues that are decisive. And in doing so, you allow citizens of the European Union to take ownership of these issues, which are often neglected. You also perform checks and balances to ensure the correct application of the principles of subsidiarity and proportionality. Madam Tillet, I know how committed you have been for the past 4 years to strengthening the role of national parliaments in the European institutional architecture. You are a convinced European, you're a passionate European, and you have presented reports on this in 2018. I also commend the commitment of you, Mr. Rapin. Last year, you organized a symposium here on the issue of the engagement of national parliaments with representatives from around Europe. This interparliamentary dialogue culture must be part of working conferences, which must be organized as frequently as possible. The 37th COSAC Biannual report explicitly mentions the role of national parliaments, which is crucial at the time that we are discussing the future of the European Union. And we hope that your works will feed into the outcomes of this conference on the future of Europe, which will end in May. Parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the President of the Republic on the 9th of December 2021 presented the main priorities of the French presidency of the Council of the European Union. Now, I won't go into detail on all of them. However, I wish to highlight some of the major issues which we wish to focus on in order to achieve tangible results in a timely manner. We have been committed for 4 years now to a more sovereign sovereign Europe. And that means the European Union's capacity to define and control its borders. That is why we will continue to pursue the work, which is nevertheless difficult, on the Migration and Asylum Pact, and also in the shorter term on the Schengen reform. We will be advocating a more political steering with a model based on the Schengen area. We will be discussing ways in which we can make these borders more secure. We will also be defending the emergency inter-assistance mechanism, which will be launched in the case of issues at our borders, as we've seen over the past few months. We truly believe in a European defense model, something that must be used in cases such as what we're seeing in Ukraine today. Since 2017, we have undertaken a number of efforts on this issue: the European Defence Fund, the Initiative for Investment, the weapons program. All of this shows that we wish to see a paradigm shift when it comes to security, and this will be further extended by the adoption thereof in the months to come. We will be also adopting a strategic compass on European security. Sovereign Europe is also a Europe that takes an interest in its neighbourhood. There are two geographic areas of particular interest for the French Presidency. Africa, there will be a conference on the 17th and 18th of February in Brussels on this issue. We're preparing this conference with Charles Michel to ensure that our relationship with Africa is not limited to the issue of migration or security, but to ensure that we have a shared agenda in terms of investment, growth, education, health, and climate. Between Africa and the European Union, they will be an essential partner in the decades to come.
A conference on the Pacific will take place in February, and in June we will organize a conference announced by President Macron on the Western Balkans, and this will be in cooperation with the next president and will be a priority for the Czech Republic, because we must absolutely remind ourselves of our commitments, not just in terms of negotiations for enlargement, but for investment and infrastructure, and in terms of health in this region, which will be in the European Union at some point. The second large component that we want to insist on is the new European model for growth and investment, to use the expression used by the President of the Republic. It is about expressing our pride, our attachments to a European model, the strength of which we have seen during the crisis, and we've not seen this anywhere else in the world, with this link and intensity, the solidarity expressed towards our companies, our workers, and also the democratic life of our parliament. All of you can be a witness to this. Our parliaments did not stop when the restrictions were very difficult, when the debates were complicated. We continued our work, and this is part of our democratic life, which is very specific to Europe. We must strengthen this model with concrete results. I will just mention three that we would like to move forward on, and I hope that we will be able to move forward significantly during the French presidency. First of all, in terms of climate, with a carbon adjustment mechanism at the borders of Europe. This would be a tool of fairness, so that our companies, so that our industrial sectors, who are necessary for the energy transition, will not be taken down by unfair competition if other powers in the world do not apply the same environmental requirements. And we must ensure that there is fairness in the industrial and economic relationships. I think this is vital to succeed in our environmental transition. We must ensure that it is effective, fair, economical and social. We will also, and this is the second example, we will also try to strengthen the sovereignty and the strength of the DSA. Two texts have been discussed, and they are, as I said, the DSA and the DMA, and more simply, these laws will ensure that there is the legal responsibility of the major players in the digital field. We need this, and I think we need this at the level of Europe so that we can show the way to other global powers who want to find a balance between the digital innovation that we require, that we need, and how to adjust it to our democracies and our economies. The third example, the European model that has been adapted and strengthened as it relates to the social aspect. We must not forget this once the crisis has passed. France has, along with other European countries, taken initiatives on specific points. I know that in your parliaments it has been a sensitive debate, and we must try to strengthen our social rights. And I'm thinking about the directive on minimum wages in Europe, and also the legislations on fair pay between men and women. We have two European texts that may be adopted throughout this presidency, and I think that this is essential. We must also preserve the values of the European Union. We must preserve the idea of a more human Europe, a sense of belonging, to use one of the terms from the motto of our presidency. I would also like to mention, and I will do this briefly, the Conference on the Future of Europe, and your parliamentarians have taken part, and this is a unique opportunity for the 27 countries of the Union to talk about the priorities of the European reform. I hope that in May, when this conference concludes, that we will be able to summarize in just a few priorities of reform and actions, the major focus points of this conference, not just so that we can debate them, but so that we can implement useful actions. In France, we organize conferences in each of the regions of the country and across and overseas, and your contribution is decisive here, and I am very pleased to see that the third chapter of the 37th report is dedicated to this very ambition. I also mentioned the values of the European Union that will be at the heart of our presidency. This is a personal commitment on this topic. We will continue our discussions on the rule of law, and we will also conduct discussions and perhaps implement actions if the European Court of Justice validates the new conditionality mechanism to assure liberties and fundamental rights within the European Union. We want to fight against attempts to prevent the strengthening of justice, and we also want to fight against discrimination. After the 2020 package that was announced by the European Union, we will have several texts on the regulation of policy, and which are essential for a healthy democratic life. 2022 will also be the European Year of Youth, and this, as it relates to values and belonging, is crucial. We will emphasize this topic by trying to execute our work, but also to initiate new works. The President also echoed the President von der Leyen. We want to use existing programs such as Erasmus to provide a choice and opportunities to all of our young people in the upcoming years. This will be the occasion to highlight European universities. There should have been 20 universities, part of the European initiative, and we will organize an event at the end of June 2022 to bring together and to move forward within these institutions with a view to further integration. We also want to strengthen the sense of belonging to this European spirit, because this means that we can have an independent reflection on our history, our values. President Macron has also proposed the creation of a bringing together of intellectuals of all disciplines to talk about the major ethical contemporary issues. I will conclude by saying that the timeline of this presidency is very ambitious. We hope to organize more than 400 events, and we will be adapting our lives around this. We must strive to stick to this, particularly in January, which is very difficult in terms of the health crisis. We must continue to hold these meetings, face-to-face meetings or virtual meetings whenever is required. We will continue to combine this democratic life with the compliance with the health restrictions, and we will be doing this right throughout the semester for the French presidency. We will be at your side to ensure that we can have our debates and uphold our values, our European values. We share this commitment and the belief that if the European project became weaker, each of our countries would lose out. So we must be proud to be part of Europe. We must be ambitious for the future and committed to reform. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister.
Vous êtes populaire, Monsieur le Ministre, parce qu'un grand nombre d'interventions et
You're very popular because a number of people have signed up for this session, so I suggest that we try to organize our debate in the following way. Each of the participants who have demonstrated a desire to speak will be able to speak for a maximum of 1 minute. I apologize, but we have a lot of speakers, and if we want to hear from everybody, then this is the only way that we can do it. The Secretary of State for European Affairs will be able to provide answers at the end of the debate to the different speakers. And just to remind you that this morning we will suspend our works between 11 and 11:30 so that we can take our group photo at the bottom of the stairs that you all used to enter the assembly this morning. So I suggest that we begin our debate, and I'm going to call on Mick Preville to begin from Slovenia, and I will ask for Dario Stefano to prepare for the next intervention. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, dear colleagues, dear friends. Under the Slovenian presidency, we had numerous challenges that we all still face now at the present. We have laid some groundwork for important legislation, and we are really happy that the French presidency will continue work in these areas, such as digital transformation, strengthening resilience, new pact on migration and asylum, activities for green transition, and of course, the others. The European perspective for the Western Balkans was also high on the list of Slovenian priorities, and we are pleased that the French presidency will organize the Balkans Conference due to the importance of this region's security and, of course, to the future of the EU. We are all undoubtedly looking forward to the final part of the Conference of the Future of Europe. Let me just say that we all hope, and the conference will have to bring the form of the result at the end. As a younger member of parliament, I find especially encouraging that the French presidency has included youth among its priorities, and they will also be a focal point of the year of 2022, although it's the year of the youth. So for the end, of course, parliamentary dimension is very important, so thank you for that. And of course, I wish you all very great success at your work, and hope to see you at the big COSAC in March. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, Nick. Sergio Bettali next.
Grazie Presidente, grazie intanto.
Much, Mr. Chairperson. Thank you very much for opening this meeting of us with a thought for David Sassoli, a pro-European politician who led us to a new phase in which we affirm the principle of a new Europe as a community of destiny, not as a place of national interest. This is an important moment for our Union, and the French presidency of the Union can provide a decisive contribution. I raise a few issues. Next Generation EU is a completely new mechanism which is founded on mutual trust and interdependence on tax policies and on fiscal policies. And it's a new tool that should help us overcome and reform the Stability and Growth Pact to stimulate long-term investments. And then on the issue of migration flows, we must intensify our efforts to establish new partnerships, strategic partnerships with third countries, and we should provide a more important role, more pivotal role for the European Union in the Mediterranean, and we must face the issue of migration towards our continent. And lastly, we must redouble our efforts in the fight against the pandemic, and the only strength is the only actual effective way to overcome the pandemic is solidarity within the European Union. This is the only way that can lead us to overcome the present crisis, and I believe the French presidency is a huge opportunity for us. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Dario. Merci.
Thank you very much, Dario. Sergio Battagli, and then Madame Assi.
Sì, grazie Presidente. Desidero innanzitutto salutare tutti i colleghi, augurare un buon lavoro a Sabine.
First, I would like to wish you and would like to wish Sabine and Jean-François all the very best for the new presidency. This is a time of great complexity, of new challenges, and that can only be faced by a united and stronger Europe. We have the presidency, the French presidency, has a program a very ambitious program, which I fully share. I would just like to underline the importance of the definition of a new architecture for European security through the strategic compass, which is an important tool to strengthen strategic autonomy and to anchor our strategy, our security to the Euro-Atlantic dimension. And a growth strategy is important to become a more autonomous player on the global level. And lastly, I hope that during this presidency, decisive steps can be taken to put in place a more effective migration policy. Thank you very much.
Merci, Sergio.
Thank you, Sergio. Madame Assi, and then Mr. Gaeton van Godsenhoven.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And thank you for the presentation of the French presidency priorities, which to my mind are well chosen. I'm happy to see a strong commitment of the presidency to ecological sustainability and EU's climate goals. We should have and keep a high ambition with the Fit for 55 package. Reducing emissions and climate neutrality by 2050 should be integrated in all EU decision-making. We also support strengthening the EU's strategic autonomy. As said in the opening speech, there are many worrying developments in our neighborhood, as the cyber attack against the government of Ukraine last night. We need to strengthen the EU's role in defending democracy based on free and fair elections. The strategic compass will be an important element in the discussion on strengthening and developing the EU's common security and defence policy. Finally, we are happy to see the protection of EU core values to be among the priorities. Fundamental rights, democracy and the rule of law are the very basis of the European Union. All the best for the French presidency.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Now, Gaeton van Godsenhoven, and we'll ask Susanna to prepare.
Dédié à la souveraineté.
President, I would like to express our agreement with the collective approach and the more autonomous approach between the partners of the Union in close collaboration with the strategic actors of the Union. I'm thinking particular of NATO. The ambition expressed as it relates to the new growth model demonstrates that Europe is a spearhead of global development, both in terms of innovation and research, but also as it relates to the global economy, which will bring about the emergence of promising sectors that work towards carbon neutral by 2050. As it relates to a more human Europe, this is a pillar of our union and also a major factor of the European project and its sustainability. And to ensure that the culture of Europe is promoted, we must ensure that there is a linguistic diversity. I would like to thank you very much, and I wish you all of success for the French presidency.
Et derrière, Madame Zita Plastinska.
Gaetan Susana.
La delegación española.
Good morning. The Spanish delegation wishes the French presidency of the European Union every success, and we believe that it will be beneficial to the European Union as a whole. You can count on Spain's firm support. We support the priorities that have been outlined here today. And Spain also wishes to see a more sovereign Europe, which has a more social, green and digital growth, a more human Europe, which meets the expectations of our citizens. We also support initiatives to strengthen economic development and employment. And we also wish to highlight the importance of furthering the strategic autonomy of the European Union. We also share this necessity of ensuring that we move forward on the Pact on Asylum and Migration. Migration is a challenge for Europe, and it's of vital importance for Spain. We also support the European Union ensuring effective management of migratory flows based on solidarity. We wish you every success in your work. Thank you.
Merci, Susanna. Madame Plastinska.
Thank you, Madame Susanna, Madame Plastinska, and Angel Gilvar will take the floor up.
Affairs committees of the EU member states. First of all, I would like to thank you for the excellent organization and the opportunity to meet in person despite the current difficult situation and concerns about the Omicron mutation. Yes, Europe, yes, major challenges from climate change to migration issues, which are taking on new forms of hybrid wars, from fighting criminal smuggling organization to undemocratic regime, destabilizing the situation at the EU's and its member states' external borders. In November 2021, together with my colleagues from the National Council of the Slovak Republic, we took part in a working trip to the Polish Sejm in Warsaw. Members of the Polish Sejm acquainted us with the situation on the Polish-Belarusian border and organized a meeting with the Polish border guard. We subsequently adopted a resolution in the National Council expressing full solidarity support for allies, the EU member states concerned and coordinating Belarusian actions. I truly believe that our European allies fighting such a threat must be able to count on solidarity and support of other member countries and also quick reaction from Frontex. Our task is to protect borders, our citizens and European democratic values. I'm glad that this issue became one of the priorities on the French presidency. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Angel Chilvar, and I'll ask Joe McHugh to prepare.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Chairman.
I want to begin by saying that we welcome the aspiring vision proposed by the French Presidency of the EU Council, focused on goals leading to a stronger Europe. We note in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic the emergence of the idea of reorganizing the European decision-making system, the need to find the best solutions to improve EU decision-making mechanisms to respond to the crisis and strengthen resilience. I also want to mention that Romania pays special attention to protection of seasonal workers who had a significant contribution during the pandemic to proper functioning of the single market and to the supply of goods towards the European Union citizens. And in this context, it is worth mentioning that the Mobility One legislative package adopted in 2020, which has a special sensitivity not only for Romania. Although initially the aim of the package was to modernize the rules on road transport in the Union and to strengthen the rights of drivers, problematic provisions were introduced during the negotiations, which distorted the initial objectives, generating de facto discrimination against companies in a certain part of the European Union. As pointed out by the opinions sent by the Romanian Senate on the Mobility One package, both as parliamentary and governmental level, Romania supported the increase of social protection of workers in the transport sector. At the same time, and I want to end with this, Mr. President, I want to reiterate Romania's legitimate objective of joining the Schengen area. Thank you very much and good luck with your presidency.
Merci, Angel.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you. Joe McHugh, and then I'd ask our colleague, Mr. Hadjukovic, to prepare.
About Joe McHugh.
Joe McHugh first.
You after.
Frankish, I would like to say good morning, and I wish the French presidency all the best in the time ahead. I just want to make 2 points. The first one is in relation to the French presidency's plan to look at migration and a work plan in relation to the interaction and the work that needs to be done between Africa and Europe. I think that is a really, really important piece of work. Our committee in Ireland are going to be looking at that in depth in the time ahead. And obviously there's an Africa-Europe summit coming up as well that we'll be looking closely at as well. So I just want to acknowledge the French presidency for looking at this, and you certainly have our solidarity in relation to that. Second point, in relation to your work plans for the citizen and the human element to the presidency, I want to acknowledge that. And finally, I'm sorry I can't be there today. I would like to congratulate the organisers for having this opportunity at a hybrid level, but the really important thing is being together, working together, and physically meeting each other. So I look forward to that happening in the time ahead as well. So Gurumila, Mayagavlik, thank you all very much.
Merci, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Djokovic, can we have Danuta from Poland to prepare?
President.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Let me tell you how happy I am to see you all physically, finally, because the last physical meeting we had was in Zagreb in January 2020. Let's hope that this is the return to the old normal, or as normal it can be. But I hope that we will meet physically much more often than we used to in the last few years. Of course, these priorities are well outlined, and I thank Secretary of State for this comprehensive presentation of the priorities, but allow me just to stress a few points. The first one is the mentioned Schengen area reform and the 20th anniversary of introduction of euro. As you know, Croatia is the last country to join the European Union, and we hope that in the foreseeable future we will be able to join both the Eurozone and the Schengen area, with which we will complete our European integration. The second is the Western Balkans. I welcome the invitation to participate in the COSAC being extended to our colleagues and friends from the candidate countries, as well as the announced conference on the Balkans, because it is important to keep the European perspective alive in the area. And finally, minimum EU wages is a topic very close to my heart and very important if we wish to keep our union a more humane. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. Danuta, you have the floor, and I'd ask our new colleague, Anton Hofreiter, to prepare.
Mettez-vous au bord.
You need to go to the end of the road to find a microphone.
Thank you very much. Thank you, President. Dear colleagues,
Starting French presidency, we started Year of the Youth, which is also a priority of the presidency. I promised Polish young people to share with you their declaration of support for the postulates of the Climate Youth Dialogue in Poland for climate education in schools. We declare our support for the postulate of the Youth Climate Dialogue in Poland, represented by the Youth Climate Council, the Polish Council of Youth Organizations, the Youth Ecological Council, the Children and Youth Council, and the Youth Climate Strike, regarding the conduct of universal and interdisciplinary climate education in schools, considering them valuable, comprehensive, universal, and possible to implement in the countries represented in European Union. Young people will have to deal with the greatest effect of the climate crisis. Therefore, it is necessary to equip young people with appropriate tools to take up the challenges and notice the opportunities arising from climate protection through comprehensive and universal climate education, not excluding other social groups from access to such declaration. This postulate, there are 7 of them, but there is no time to share with this. But please consider this. I will send you all of them, and please consider this and deal with this. Thank you.
Merci, Danuta.
Thank you, Danuta. Anton, you have the floor, and I'd ask Radvile from Lithuania to prepare. President of the Senate, Minister, Mr. Clément Beaune, I'm very pleased to see you here today. After yesterday, you visited the committee in the Bundestag, and we would like to wish you every success with the French presidency of the Council of Europe. Just 3 comments. One, we believe that the carbon border adjustment mechanism is important, but it's important that we are able to also achieve the Fit for 55 program as well. I think that the French presidency is well positioned to actually succeed with these aims. And we believe that the climate challenge is the most important. A second comment I wanted to make is this. Yes, we believe that we need to strengthen the common Schengen area and to strengthen our borders. But for us, we also think it's important for humanity to ensure that our borders are not murderous, and especially at the Mediterranean. And thirdly, we think it's very important as well that we have clear initiatives for implementing the rule of law in all European member states. That is not just important for us in Europe, but also for our credibility outside of Europe. It's important that we really do show the importance of the rule of law. We've got to show that we are going to uphold our own standards within the European Union. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anton. Radvile, you have the floor, and I would ask Madam Juas from Hungary, to prepare.
Yes, thank you very much. Hello to everyone, dear chairmen, dear minister. Happy to be here. Unfortunately, not in a live way, but via the screen. So thank you, all of you, for your introductions and inputs, and congratulations to our French colleagues on really ambitious priorities. And thank you for all the support that I think EU and separate countries of the EU feel. I think that for the past 2 years, we all have lived under the very severe circumstances and facing challenges not only in health, migration, climate change, but what is very important in trust in democracy. So I think it is extremely important to defend our EU values, democratic values, rule of law, single market, and not only in the EU, but worldwide. Lithuania currently is experiencing aggressive pressure from China. And I want to stress that we haven't breached any of international commitments, but we have to understand that this attack is against our single market, against the whole EU and the EU trade policy. So I very welcome the ambitious goals towards EU anti-coercion instrument. And once more, thank you for the support that we experience in this matter, because I think it's important not only to deal within EU when we talk about our values and common commitments, but worldwide as well. Thank you very much and all the best.
Merci Radvile.
Thank you, Radvile, and I hope that you're doing well as well. Now, Mrs. US from Hungary, and I'd ask Mr. Georgiades from Cyprus to prepare.
Let me stress that Hungary supports some major presidency priorities related to green and digital transition and also the common fight against COVID. I wish to highlight the importance and complexity of the Fit for 55 package and climate neutrality. And in my view, energy policy and climate policy are strongly interrelated, and we have to provide energy for affordable prices for households and also for vulnerable consumers in particular. As regards third transition and taxonomy, the role of both nuclear energy and gas should be recognized and supported. On security and migration issues, I do reiterate that the significance of external border protection should be acknowledged also by finding of the physical barriers. And let me finally note, as a member of the working group of the Conference of Future of Europe, should go on with the vital role of national parliaments and with clear commitment to Western Balkan enlargement of the European Union. Thank you very much indeed.
Merci.
Thank you. Mr. Georgiades is next, and I'll ask our colleague from Austria to prepare, Mr. Lopaka.
Harris.
Is Harris here? Is Harris available?
Bon, Monsieur Lopatkas.
Well, okay, we're going reverse order.
Thank you, Minister Clement Bon, for your presentation of the priorities of your presidency. We fully support your motto, recovery, strength and belonging, and your priorities. And we hope that you are able to come to fruitful conclusions of our conference on the future of Europe. The Austrian Parliament is strongly involved in this work. We invited young people to a series of workshops, and all parties, also the parties who are against the European Union, are involved in this process. We think it's very important, and we are continuing with these conferences with Austrian young people. We had also such conferences with the support of Assemblée Nationale for young people from the Western Balkans, from all Western Balkan countries. They took part in these conferences, one in Vienna and one we had here in Paris. And so we hope that we are able to put the focus on the Western Balkans. And I'm thankful that you have beside your conference, your summit with Africa, also a conference for the Balkans. It is very important that we are a credible partner and that they see a real chance to join in the near future the European Union. So I hope that the French presidency will be also successful in this issue. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, Reinhold. We're going to try again to contact Mr. Georgiades from Cyprus. I think he's available.
Collègue des Grecs, Kaklamanis.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, my congratulations to France for the assumption of the presidency. I wish every success. President Macron said that we need to move from being a Europe of cooperation inside our borders to a powerful Europe in the world, fully sovereign and free to make its choices and master its destiny.
Dear colleagues, your camera is off.
Yes.
Yes, it's okay. Thank you.
So this is indeed how we should proceed, a Europe of security and shared values, able to speak with one voice in the international scene. And one issue that will test our credibility in this direction is the issue of migration, and especially the instrumentalization of migration by authoritarian regimes. I'm referring to the Lukashenko regime in Belarus, and I'm referring to Turkey. Cyprus has been on the receiving end of such policies for the last few years, and it has the highest number of asylum seekers in the EU by population. So it's therefore urgent that we reach an agreement on the new pact on migration and asylum without any further delay. This should be a priority, a pact that will not lack in ambition and will be underpinned by unity and solidarity and the Union's values. If we fail to do so, we risk alienating our people across the Union. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your attention.
Merci, cher collègue.
Thank you, colleague. Our Greek colleague, Mr. Kakalmanis, and Mrs. Ria Oomen-Ruijten from the Netherlands can prepare.
Good morning from good year to you, and all the best to the French presidency. Greece is aligned with the priorities of the French program, and it shares the emphasis on European coordination and European solidarity. We agree that addressing the pandemic and the migration issue can only be dealt with at European level. I would, however, like to emphasize the point of strengthening European democracy. It is true that the Conference on the Future of Europe was an ambitious idea that sought to engage European citizens. However, I have the impression, Chair, at least today, that this endeavor is far from its initial aspirations. You'll allow me to express my reservations on the role of the working groups and the way they have functioned, on the insistence on no written texts and the sidelining of national parliamentarians, and the senseless functioning so far of the plenary of the conference. Beyond all that, there are also the objective difficulties due to the pandemic. So I'm expecting the results of this conference with many, I'm going to be honest, with many reservations. I would like to hear your views and those of our colleagues. And let me note, finally, that I'm listening with interest to the proposal to establish a common European constituency, and we are looking forward to further details on this issue. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
I thank you, Madame Ria Oomen, followed by Peter Kmek.
Ok. Allez-y.
Go ahead. You have the floor.
Objective to unlock the dossier on migration. Where do you start, and which refreshments will be foreseen to get an approval in the Council? My second question is the strategic dossier on security and defense. What should we expect? More convergence, or can we expect new initiatives? Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Peter Kmek, followed by Marko Kapavic.
Dear Mr. Secretary, dear Clément, I would like to congratulate the French Presidency for presenting very comprehensive and ambitious priorities for the first half of 2022. Its motto, recovery, strength and a sense of belonging, correctly reflects the challenges we are facing in the months and years to come. In the meantime, it's critically important that our goals for a more sovereign, more green, more digital Europe go hand in hand with our efforts to build more social, more just and more human Europe. All our recovery and transformation efforts should have a citizen in the center of our attention. Citizens should be the winners of these processes and not the losers. Together with the European businesses, they should be the ones who profit the most from the new European deal and not the global multinational corporations or lobbying groups. That is why I fully support the efforts of the French presidency to make Europe more social, including the introduction of a directive on minimum wages, the efforts to create more decent, qualified and better paid jobs, or the promotion of gender equality by presenting a directive on pay transparency. I would like to encourage the French presidency to continue implementing the European Pillar of Social Rights Action Plan, especially in the areas of employment, education and training, as well as fighting the poverty. Thank you.
D'accord, monsieur.
I thank you, Mr. Pavic, followed by Mr. Muzuyu.
Dear colleagues, congratulations first to the French presidency on their ambitious program. As former Croatian minister who worked on Croatian presidency, I know how challenging it is to have a presidency during COVID pandemic. Croatia has also a new strategic partnership with France, and we are very happy that we hosted President Macron and Minister Bon recently in Zagreb. We look forward also to work together on Future of Europe conference, as Minister Bon will take the co-chair, and I also invite him to visit Zagreb for the Friends of Europe event this year. As Croatia, we fully support French proposal for the Schengen reform, as we are the country with the largest external land border. Under new strategic partnership, we see enlargement of Schengen and reform as parallel process, and we fully support it. We also support all the efforts to have enlargement on Western Balkans. Thank you very much, and once again, congratulations to the presidency and congratulations to the French handball team for the win on Euro Championships yesterday over Croatia. Thank you.
Thank you. Stefan, you have the floor, followed by Madam Katja Meyer. Katja will follow Mr. Muzuyu. Romania first.
Dear colleagues, first allow me to congratulate the Slovenian presidency on its achievements, especially in the area of resilience and recovery, and for its contribution in keeping the EU's security at the eastern borders. Romania fully supports the priorities of the 13th French presidency of the Council, noticing its ambitions in the areas of security, economic growth and social protection. Having regard to the real internal and external challenges, we agree that a stronger unity is needed for a more sovereign Europe, aiming to better protect our external borders, to better defend against hybrid threats, and to better fight against illegal immigration. Considering the enlargement process, we strongly support a credible EU perspective for the Western Balkans, and we are looking forward to the opening of the accession negotiation with the Republic of North Macedonia and Albania as soon as possible. Romania also encourages the candidate Serbia and Montenegro to continue their reform efforts in order to facilitate further progress in the negotiation process. Thank you for your attention.
Merci.
Thank you. Katja Meyer, followed by Madam Zerwinska from Poland.
Thank you very much. Also from here, I would like to very much thank you for organising this conference during this difficult period. The crisis actually puts us all in very great difficulties, and as a representative from Germany, I can really understand the difficulties you've been confronted with. So thank you for the organisation of this conference, and also thank you for your hospitality. I'd also like to thank Clément Beaune for the presentation of the French presidency. I can only support this quite clearly, quite strongly. You talked about the importance of the European economy and the aims of climate protection and carbon neutrality. And this is an important aim, and I think we've got to achieve this. We've also want to make sure that we can set this stage for this twin transition, the green and the digital transition. And this is going to also bring the citizens of Europe along with us. I think that the conference on the future of Europe is also a very important instrument in that regard. That's another way of making sure that the citizens can participate, and I would like to see more of this. hope that we don't conclude this in the spring, but that we can continue with this process, that we actually have an interim report, but that we continue with this work. It would be giving a very important sign, I think, to the citizens. From my own region, from Saxony, I think we can say, as a border region, we have a border with Poland and the Czech Republic, and it's very important for us during this pandemic period as well that we have close cooperation and exchange with our neighbours, because in the border regions as well, we can see how lively things can be. We need to work together, not just in matters of justice and police and border issues, but also for civil society also wants to cooperate. Thank you.
Madam Zawinska, followed by Madam Tabakou.
Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for the possibility to meet you. I'd like to meet the 1-minute deadline. Hence, I'd like to very quickly refer to the Fit for 55. I'd like to highlight that the negotiation compromise and the later success of the implementation of these decisions Fit for 55 depends on meeting the specific requirements and conditions of particular member states, and at the same time ensuring the proper level of financing of low and zero emission investments, especially when it comes to countries with a GDP per capita below the EU average. Now, the works on the package Fit for 55 should include, first and foremost, a rapid and necessary reform of the ETS trading system in order to implement an efficient mechanism which would mitigate a too huge increase of emissions, at the same time secure for the entire system credibility and the possibility to foresee its results. Considering the very difficult, even crisis situation on the energy market, our activities have to be thorough, rational and reasonable and well balanced, because this is what our people expect from us. Now, I wish the French presidency and all of you all the best and only successes. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Madam Tabakou, followed by Madam Stojkovic from Serbia.
Let me wish a lot of success to the French presidency, and thank you very much for the hospitality of the last 2 days. I was very happy to see that the Western Balkans ranks very high amongst the priorities of the French presidency, and this is a good news for all the Western Balkans countries. I know of the skepticism of some of the member countries for Albania's advancement, and I want to thank you also in the name of the opposition, because I represent an opposition party here. And the change of approach gives the opportunity for the government to also look much more closely in the implementation of some of the criteria, such as rule of law, democracy, elections, human rights, fights against corruption, illegal immigration, which are and should be also on the first agenda of other Western Balkan countries. I believe that there is no bigger transformational force than the European integration process, and I will continue personally as chair of the European integration process to engage in this. But I just want that you are aware that demotivation and skepticism also among Albanian people has been increasing. So a decision sooner than later will help all of us to advance. Thank you very much and good luck for the very ambitious next 6 months.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Madam Stojkovic from Serbia, followed by Mr. Ademir Alba.
I would like to thank you, the Senate and National Assembly of the Republic of France, for organizing this event, and we wish you very successful in the following 6 months of your chairmanship. The Republic of Serbia and the National Assembly of Republic of Serbia proceed with the consistent work on implementation on reforms in order to become an equal EU member, observing and respecting of all diversities and problems faced by EU itself. We think that the decision to open the cluster 4 is good, and will be able Serbia to additionally to put forward a candidacy for major projects in the field of environmental protections, restoration of biodiversity, improvement of the quality of air, water and soil, and circular economy, of course. Generally speaking, Serbia has made visible progress in legislative, prevention of money laundering and human trafficking, asylum, fight against corruption and organized crimes. And finally, we are aware the accession process is defined with means of numerous obligations and decisions, and we have to adapt, and which require a strong political will, implementation of legal reforms and resolving the open questions with our neighbors. Thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aber, followed by Mr. Gvozdenovic.
Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to extend my congratulations on your French EU presidency. The past 2021 for us as a candidate country for membership to EU is unused opportunity for taking positive steps in embodiment of the decision for opening accession negotiations adopted on 25th of May 2020. I would like to express appreciation for the positive attempts during the Portuguese and Slovenian presidency, as well as the Brdo summit, which unfortunately had not have positive outcome for our goal, opening accession negotiation with North Macedonia and Albania. Hence, North Macedonia is dedicated to find acceptable solutions to surpass this dispute with Bulgaria, but also to implement the reforms which need to provide equally and better lives for the citizens and in the same time mean approach the EU. As you know, in the context of our current bilateral issue with Bulgaria, there are new moments. The two states have new governments. The government of Bulgaria is already elected, and on Sunday we are to elect a new government here in North Macedonia. I believe these changes shall have a positive influence in the promotion of our bilateral relations and that it shall contribute to our mutual trust and friendship. I am pleased by the signals from this presidency that France wants to surpass the dispute between Bulgaria and North Macedonia, and that the timeline provided by Sofia should be respected. We are very thankful, and once again, I wish you many success during this mandate and the EU presidency. Thank you once again.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Gvozdenovic from Montenegro, followed by Madame Soreide from Norway.
Dear fellow parliamentarians, the priorities of the six-month French presidency of the EU Council gives us hope that France will be a messenger of new and positive changes, both in the EU itself and on the entire European continent. A sovereign Europe, new modern growth, human Europe as priorities raise hope for a new transformation of Europe that will resonate in the future, just as historical reforms and values that started from France and spread throughout the continent have their echo even today. I emphasize the necessity for ensuring the political, economic and health recovery of both the Western Balkans and Europe by reaffirming the European value of unity and belonging to EU ideas. Given that France has initiated the preparation of a new negotiation methodology during the current presidency, I hope for clearer guidelines for its implementation, which is especially important for Montenegro, given that we have opened all negotiation chapters and that a cluster approach cannot be strictly applied to us. Citizen support for the EU accession process is around 75%, which obliges all actors in the accession process to even better cooperation and joint action to accelerate necessary reforms and the negotiation process as a whole. Due to the need to identify the model of the European community
Thank you,
we want to develop, for Montenegro, the Conference on the Future of Europe and the participation is very important to the EU itself.
Please respect the time limit.
Here, parliaments will play a significant role as representative bodies of citizens, especially in the promotion of European values and the preservation of pro-European support. President Emmanuel Macron said
Madame Soreide.
Thank you, Madame Soreide, followed by Mr. Kinnoul.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair. And France has presented a very ambitious and comprehensive program for
Thank
the
you for your
presidency.
attention.
The importance of the cross-border health cooperation has also been very evident through the pandemic. And from Norway's side, we are very grateful for the cooperation that we have with the EU in this regard. I'm also happy to note that France is highlighting rule of law and democracy for its presidency. And in Europe, the independence of the judiciary, the press freedom, and fight against corruption are fundamental values and important, of course, in their own right. In addition to that, they are values that also are cornerstones for the internal market. An erosion of them will effectively affect the economy and our growth prospects. The internal market has been essential in creating growth and jobs in Europe for the better part of 30 years and is going to be extremely important also now in the economic recovery. And lastly, Chair, I'd like to highlight the need for European coordination also when it comes to security policy, which unfortunately right now maybe is more pressing than it has been for years. And I welcome the increased cooperation on defense in the EU, complementing NATO, which is and should be the cornerstone of European security. And the work that is done now on military mobility, on PESCO and the European Defence Fund are all good examples of this. Norway is both welcoming them and taking part in them. So thank you very much for your attention.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker is Mr. Charles Kinnoul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I speak at the end of what has been a fascinating and wide-ranging debate, and can I add my congratulations to the French Presidency on their programme, which was so very well introduced in an excellent speech by Monsieur Beaune. I congratulate as well Monsieur Rapin on his assured and firm chairmanship, so difficult in a hybrid format, and Madame Thiai for her clear words at the start. So many of the great issues that face all our liberal democracies today are the same. COVID and the entire green agenda are two obvious examples. But the interdependence of our economies and the rising threat posed by more authoritarian regimes around the world are equally things that we as national parliamentarians of the liberal democracies must work together and in harmony on. We in the House of Lords are fully dedicated to this and regard Kosak as a key part of the mechanism to make this happen. I wish every success to the French presidency in the months to come.
Merci, Charles.
Thank you, Charles Kinnoul. Now, Minister Beaune will have to address all of these questions. That was a very long discussion, so I'll ask you to be brief and to answer the questions as much as you can. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, parliamentarians. I'll try to address some of the comments that you've made, and I'd like to thank you, first of all, for the broad support that you've shown to the major priorities of this French presidency of the Council of the European Union. And I also share the thanks that you've expressed to Mr. Rapin and Madame Thiai. I heard a lot about our neighbourhood, the Western Balkans in particular, and I think it's very important to move forward on negotiations underway, as was recalled, and also to initiate negotiations for North Macedonia and Albania. This is our intention, and we support the discussions held under between Bulgaria and North Macedonia over the past few days. As regards accessions, we also wish to support and to strengthen the assistance provided by the European Union to our close neighbours in the Western Balkans in terms of infrastructure, vaccines, ecological transition, and the fight against trafficking. This is a concrete example of the European Union's investment several months ago, and this is what we want to also address during the conference in April. Now, in the future, we will also be discussing the issue of Africa. We will be holding a conference in February with the European Council. I hadn't expressed this directly in my intervention, but there's also the Eastern Partnership with the recent summit that took place. France is engaged bilaterally to address the tensions and also to strengthen this partnership. The European Union is the closest partner for these countries today.
The questions of sovereignty were also mentioned, both in terms of defence and security, the strategic compass. I won't go over this, but I heard that several times. And you also mentioned, and this is the objective of this compass, the report of the European Union, or the relationship of the European Union with the greater powers of the world, those who are closer to us, Russia, and also China. And I would also like to refer to the support of the French Presidency from all of the European Union faced with organised threats on two fronts, from China, commercially speaking, but we have also seen even before the situation spreads in Poland and Lithuania, we have Belarus with this hybrid attack. And over the last week, we have had the attack on our diplomatic services, and this means that we must ensure that this crisis is contained. And I think that this is a success of European solidarity. As it relates to sovereignty and borders, you mentioned this in your interventions. You mentioned migration. We must respect our values and our rules in terms of asylum, but we must also protect borders. And the question was raised. The Schengen reform does not exclude, obviously, the integration or the accession of new members, and I know that in particular Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria are prepared, and we have demonstrated wide openness in this respect. We must work to ensure that the Schengen space is reinforced and strengthened, but ensuring that we have greater political coordination. As it relates to the new European model, I'm not seeking to export this term, but many of these main priorities were raised, in particular the climate challenge. As the French presidency has many ambitions as it relates to the 2030 and 2050 objectives, but also as it relates to the vigilance and sensitivity of how we adopt this extension of these objectives. And this must be taken into consideration, particularly when we think about the social aspect of the green transition. As it relates to the social aspect, I should mention some areas of vigilance. I think we're all fighting against social dumping. We must strengthen our social protections, but we must also find a balance, because we do not all have the same levels of income, of competitiveness, and our social models must respect this diversity. As it relates to health, I did not mention it directly, but it was mentioned in your interventions. I should have mentioned it, but there has been the implementation of the ERA agency, which was lacking during the crisis. And this is one of the main priorities of the French presidency, to ensure that this European text is executed. In terms of the European model, two other points that require perhaps further details that were mentioned in the first speech: the issue of growth, the investment strategy, and in this framework, even if I do think that we need to widen our debate, the question of budgetary regulations. This is something that we must debate over the French presidency semester. There will be proposals made to the European Commission. We will have different debates organised, particularly in over the 10th and the 11th of March. We need to adapt our rules, but we also need to ensure that there are priorities as it relates to common European projects. As it relates to democracy, and I will conclude on this point, this is something that was raised in all of your interventions, and I would like to share my thanks, but also my hope as it relates to your commitments for the Conference of the Future of Europe. Everything that you mentioned, the protection of our borders, defense and security, neighborhood, and the way that we will integrate other countries into the European Union, all of this must be supported by significant reforms. And these reforms, I believe, must also come before these ambitions of enlargement, because we need to ensure that our union functions effectively. And so we need to ensure that we carry out all of the possible improvements to do this. I would like to thank the Chair Tillet and Chair Rapin, and to thank them in their capacity as parliamentarians, but also as part of the government. And thanks to the presidency that came before us, Slovenia, they were responsible for carrying out the last mile, if you will, to the French presidency. There's lots of work that has been done on the strategic compass. And I would also thank all of the partners working with France, so the Czech Republic and Sweden, with whom we defined this program. Thank you very much, because this presidency will require collective work, and without this collective work, we will not be able to make effective progress. So thank you very much for your spirit of cooperation. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for sticking to the time limit. I think you managed to answer all of the questions. Dear colleagues, we're slightly behind time, but that's fine. We will now meet at the bottom of the grand stairway. You will exit at the top of the assembly, and our colleagues will accompany you down the stairs, and we will proceed with our group photo. I apologize that I have not been able to take you to the Senator's Bar for a coffee. Unfortunately, health measures mean that the bar has to remain closed. I apologize for that. And for the group photo, we will ask the heads of delegations to join us for the group photo. So I would ask you to exit the assembly, and we will resume our work at 11:30 at the latest.
Ladies and gentlemen, President, Chairman of the committees, we're going to start our second meeting now of the COSAC, the second working group, which is going to be looking at the new working methods within the COSAC. Now, under this very general heading, what we want to propose to you is a project which is very, very dear to me, because I think it's very important that if we want to improve the effectiveness of our work and the impact of our work, we've got to set up these working groups. We presented this to the Troika at a first meeting on Monday last, and the Troika approved this proposal after, first of all, making a number of comments about our proposals and giving precise details, and we've actually taken that on board in the note that was sent out to you all. We looked at it again this morning at a Troika meeting by looking at the procedural points that we need to keep in mind. I'll present these later on. The Troika has actually passed this, they've approved this project, the creation of the working parties, including Antonio Tajani, who wasn't able to participate at the meeting, but who actually gives his full support. I'm going to give the floor now to my colleague Jean-François Rapin, who will tell us about the aim of the setting up of these working groups and the means in which we have to set this up. And I will then give the floor to anyone who would like to speak on the matter. I think it's important for us to actually have a debate, a broad debate on this subject, because although the regulation does give us an opportunity to set up working groups, but we need to have a vote by the absolute majority of the COSAC. But I would like this new project to be adopted by consensus. Let me now give the floor to Jean-François Rapin, who is the president of the Working Party within the Senate. Thank you very much, Madame Taillé. And first of all, I would like to address you all, the chairs of the committees on European affairs. I don't want to pick up again on the comments on the content of the working document that was sent out to you all, but I just wanted to say that there is an agreement between us all, is feeling that the COSAC is really an indispensable tool, not just because it creates an area for discussion between European national parliaments and the European Parliament, but also enables us to actually give expression to a certain number of comments of issues that are discussed at European level. And we're able also to actually send our proposals to the European Parliament. And so we are indeed an initial discussion chamber for issues that are of a European interest and to get our opinions heard in Europe. So it's very important for both first at national level and at European level. The role of this conference, the role of the COSAC and the means that we have and the way in which we use these means is indeed a key challenge for the democracy within Europe and bringing Europe closer to its citizens. And this is a matter of our future. The presidency of our conference means that we're able to enrich in the discussions within the COSAC. And the French presidency would like to actually improve the workings of the COSAC in a continuous way, because we believe we're able to actually make COSAC much more effective and much more visible. And that is why Sabine Tillet and myself have actually decided to propose the creation of two working groups. We want to ensure that the European citizens are closer to the European Union. This is part and parcel of the French presidency's aims as well, because we said that the French presidency says it wants to support a recovery and a sense of belonging, and this is where we are actually able to participate, to actually increase the sense of belonging of the European citizens, and to increase the role of the national parliaments within the European Parliament. And so we believe that this, if we want to try and better impact with a view from the 27 member states, it's very understandable. We have also got to be able to show where there are points of agreement between members of the working groups, but also we want to show where there is diversity in their approaches. And we believe that these values of the European Union are in part and parcel of, even though they're in part Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union, I think that there is a difference in the way in which these values are actually discussed and dealt with in different member states. So we want to set up a working group to see how different member states understand these values and to have a discussion on the difficulties that some states have to conform with these values while at the same time fulfilling their role. And so what we want to do is to set up a working group where we can have a panorama where we see how we see our role as controlling the European policies of our governments and at the same time following the work that's being done at European level. And so I think it would be interesting as well to enabling us to see how national member states, how we can actually play a role collectively at European level and how that role could actually be used. So let's look and see how the working groups would actually be set up and how they would work. Each group would be actually presided over by one of the presidents of the COSAC, either Sabine Tillier or myself. If we agree with the proposal today, then we would also work with you, who are either vice presidents of the European Parliament or chairs of your own committees, to nominate members from your parliaments to participate in the working groups. You would give us the names of the participants. We would suggest that we have a maximum of 2 people from each parliament coming into each working group. Now, of course, we need to make sure that we have fair representation, but it's not an obligation. It's you can adhere to a working group on a voluntary basis. We want to make sure that each assembly or each parliament can appoint its own delegate to the working group. The working group would therefore be made up of a maximum of 56 members of parliament. We are hoping that by the end of January 2022, we'll be able to constitute these working groups. They could then start working in February. They could hold hearings and exchanges of views between the groups by video conference. You could decide, the presidency of the working groups would decide on who's going to be invited to the hearings and what subjects will be discussed. The presidency would actually establish a timetable after consultation with the members of the group. The work would start in February and continue until the end of the French presidency. Each working group would then be able to meet at least twice, maximum of twice a month. We're going to have a midway report that would be hopefully presented at the beginning of March 2022 at our COSAC full meeting. But that would not actually be the end of the work of the working groups. We believe that it would be impossible for us to conclude our work by then. So each group would continue working after the plenary so that we would have a final report presented by the end of the French presidency, so at the end of the 6th of June 2022. André Benezik, who is the chair of the European Affairs in the Czech Parliament, has said that perhaps the working groups could continue to work under the Czech presidency as well, but they would not. He could not at this stage give any guarantee that this would actually be possible. We are very respectful of the remit of every presidency to decide on its own priorities, and so we, under the French presidency, would like to continue with these working groups and hope that we would get a conclusive report by the end of the French presidency, so the end of June 2022. Each presidency would also prepare a report at the end looking at the plurality of views that have been expressed during the meetings. Each report would then be submitted to the members of the working group for discussion. And this would enable us to have further analysis of projects, to add comments from other members of the working group. The final report would then be adopted by consensus, with the possibility for one or several members to have annexes made to the report. They could actually add a written contribution to the report, giving a divergent position. The 2 reports from the 2 working groups would then be presented according to the modalities that we have yet to discuss. The COSAC would be able to then pick up on some of the orientations in the reports, if they so wish, and integrate these concerns in the conclusions of or as contributions to the COSAC, which COSAC can then actually adopt. This group it's been said that this might be a duplication of the work that's already being done elsewhere, but we've noticed that the Conference on the Future of Europe has actually been using parliamentarians who are not necessarily members of the COSAC, so we're not actually duplicating the work being done in the Conference on the Future of Europe. Also, as a collective group of national parliaments, we should be able to carry out our own reflections on any subject, even if it's covered by other bodies such as the Conference on the Future of Europe. So we the Conference on the Future of Europe is going to be looking at all issues pertaining to Europe in any case. We are able to set up a working groups on, this is part of our democratic mandate. So it's important that we as MPs at European and national level are able to actually look at issues which are pertaining to this, this key issue, which is the role of parliaments in a state of law. If COSAC deems it desirable, we could also establish this to be put online, our discussion to be put online, as has been the case with the Conference on the Future of Europe. And it could also feed into the conference. So this is something which has been proposed, and these are the proposals we table to you today. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair, dear Jean-François, and I'd also like to thank the Troika for the work that they have done on this as well with our Czech and Slovene colleagues. I would now like to organise our debate, and of course the European Parliament too. I'd like to suggest that we have a debate now saying in this fashion that anyone who wants to take the floor could take the floor for 2 minutes, and then we will then pick up on the various questions which have been raised by my colleagues after the list of, once we've exhausted the list of speakers. So let me start by giving the floor to Domagoj Hajčukovič.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have had many debates on the COSAC meetings, how to upgrade our work, how to have more debates and less monologues, how to have a dialogue, not a monologue. And I think that the proposal of the French presidency and of the Troika to create these groups is a step forward. Definitely, we will probably need some time to make the most of our work within the groups, to make it more effective, to make it more propulsive, so to say, to even make the formal frame how the groups will work. But I still think it will improve our work, it will improve the dialogue, and it will improve the quality of the work in COSAC. Why? Because the groups will be focusing on specific issues. We will have exchanges with selected people from the Union or outside the Union, depending on the subject, and that can enrich our work also in the national parliaments. The Portuguese presidency had a similar take, although not in the groups. But we had, if you remember, dear colleagues, many exchanges with European commissioners, with other dignitaries on certain topics that were of interest to the presidency or in line with the priorities of the presidency. Maybe diffusing it in the groups, so to say, would make it more efficient, would allow us as the presidents of the committees to select people from our committees who are interested in the subject or have certain expertise in the subject debated, and that can also improve the quality of our work. So from the side of the Croatian delegation, we support the proposal of the Troika.
Thank you very much, Croatia, for your support. We thank you for your support. Indeed, it will allow us to achieve greater understanding and to get to know each other better. That's another one of the objectives of this working group proposal. Madame Eliane Tilleux is not ready, so I call upon Madame Danuta Jaszczulewska from Poland to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Dear colleagues, European Parliament started to work on Fit for 55 package. So far as I know, there are not yet draft reports of the reporters. I'm wondering if it's possible to organize, for example, online debate with all reporters about our way of thinking and our expectation of these reports. I think this way it will bring us more integrated cooperation with European Parliament, and also maybe let us know better in which way this Fit for 55 package is going. Please consider this, and hopefully we can do it. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for that suggestion, which we will duly take into account. Is Madame Eliane Thieu ready? Not yet. Therefore, we'll give the floor to Madame Roland Kaminga from the Netherlands Lower House.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. It's an honor for me to be here today with the first COSAC under the French presidency. I've listened with great interest to the meeting and the presentation this morning of the French priorities, and I think these are priorities we all share. We have the utmost confidence that you bring all these priorities a step further to good decisions, and we're looking forward and working with you together on that. Then on the proposals of the additional working groups, I think some colleagues already said that it's very good and very important that we have more dialogue amongst each other and more debate instead of just having a presentation of 1 or 2 minutes. So we support that, and especially we support the working group on the place of European values in the heart of the sense of belonging. For the Dutch Parliament, the aspect of the rule of law should be a central theme in this working group. The rule of law is fundamental for the Union and the basis on which we work together. It's no secret that in the Netherlands we have a lot of concerns on this matter and the current developments in some countries on this topic. We therefore support this working group because we deem it only fit that this topic is not only discussed in the European Parliament or amongst European leaders. It should also be discussed amongst us as national parliaments. I would in this regard be interested in how the chair wants to move ahead, because I heard the explanation this morning, but I think it's a rather ambitious plan, and I'm all for ambition, but I think we should also be realistic to get the steps, the necessary steps. I thank you, Madam Chair, also for your input on these matters, because I know that you've done a lot to make this happen, so thank you for that also from the Netherlands, and I'm looking forward to working with you and all of you on these matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. I now give the floor to Eva Kjer Hansen from the Danish Parliament.
Thank you so very much. Allow me, first of all, to thank the Troika for putting this on the agenda, to have this discussion about our working methods in COSAC. It's a splendid idea. We can really make some interesting work in the working groups, but I would also like to suggest that we have another working group, namely on how we work in COSAC in general. Because, dear colleagues, this is a splendid forum where we can get in contact with one another, get some mutual understanding, have interesting talks with one another, where we can learn about the conditions and the positions and the practices. And we can act much better on behalf of our citizens when we are close together. But there we need to change the way we work. I've been in this for many, many years, and we need much more direct dialogue, real discussions with one another. We have to find out how we can improve in getting more effective meetings, and where we are clear about the purpose of meeting and what it is we want to discuss, namely issues which matters, issues where we as national parliamentarians can have a say on the European decisions. So, Madam Chair, I would like to propose a third working group where we discuss in general the methods of how we work in COSAC. There's so much we could do of changes. We could also look at the big plenary, the number of participants. Do we have to have a family photo each time, or could we use the time for better issues? Let's consider that and see how we could strengthen the role of national parliamentarians, and this would be the ideal forum to do that, but it means that we have to sit together and discuss the way we are working today. I think we are ready for a reform here, and I would really appreciate if we could have a work being done on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. I fully agree, in my personal capacity, that the COSAC is a great institution, but indeed we do need to update our working methods. Unfortunately, we can't give effect to this suggestion right now because we have to discuss it in our Troika meeting. However, we will add it to the agenda. I believe that my colleague, Mr. Rapin, will agree, and we can ensure that this is added to the agenda for the Czech presidency. This is the first time we're establishing working groups. It's the first time we're activating Article 2 of our Rules of Procedure. And therefore, we still need to determine how we will proceed. But I do fully agree. We have a lot of leverage available, and we must seize these opportunities. I now give the floor to Madame Eliane Tillier from the Chamber of Representatives of Belgium. Good morning, Madam Chair of the National Assembly European Affairs Committee, Chair of the Senate European Affairs Committee, dear colleagues. Unfortunately, I can't be with you in person today, but fortunately, hybrid technologies have allowed many of us to take part in the discussion and to attend today. I'm very pleased to be here today, if virtually. I'm very pleased to take the floor on new working methods within COSAC. There's a proposal to create 2 working groups. The Federal Committee on European Affairs of the Parliament of Belgium is fully willing to contribute to this initiative. I would like to make 2 proposals regarding the format and the content of working methods. According to the rules of procedures, in terms of format, a preparatory meeting of European Affairs committees should be organized before each COSAC meeting. Where appropriate, this preparatory meeting could be organized in the future in virtual format in order to focus on the preparation for the plenary. The agenda items could include the priorities of the presidency and the discussion of themes addressed in the biannual COSAC report. As regards content, in 2015, COSAC discussed the issue of strengthened dialogue process, the green card process. A working group considered this process, but it was not followed up on. The new working group on the role of national parliaments within the EU could breathe new life into this green card, this initiative which would allow national parliaments to contribute to the agenda of the EU with legislative initiatives that could be proposed on specific themes, which would oblige European institutions to take a stance on the initiatives. The aim of the green card would allow national parliaments to express their views as part of political dialogue and to contribute to a better future for Europe. The French presidency, if it received a mandate to create this working group on the role of national parliaments, would allow us to relaunch the Green Card initiative, which would breathe new life into political dialogue. And in turn, COSAC would be able to increase its visibility in the media and also among the general public. I hope that these proposals are agreeable to you. Thank you very much, dear colleague. We've taken due note of those proposals. Indeed, the strengthening of the policy dialogue process will be one of the major issues to be addressed during the working group sessions, and particularly the group on the role of national parliaments with the Green Card initiative, as you mentioned. In fact, a questionnaire has been prepared which will be circulated to you following this meeting, and one of the questions in this questionnaire regards that topic. I now give the floor to Mr. Dario Stefano from the Italian Senate.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson and colleagues. During the December meeting of COSAC, I raised a few issues on the role of national parliaments that should be enhanced within the Conference on the Future of Europe, such as the issue of the legislative initiative of the European Parliament that has been raised by us already, a stronger role for national parliaments in monitoring governments within the European Council and central councils, and a closer legislative dialogue between the European Parliament and national parliaments. And I'd also raised the need to strengthen and empower the role of COSAC, and which should be used in order to feed the views of national parliaments within the European legislative procedure. And in this sense, I fully share the French background note on the need to have in-depth discussions within the COSAC and with more response, dialogue, exchange of different views, so as to find a common ground and then make a decision to publish a position of the conference on the individual issues. So I welcome very much the French proposal on the establishment of a working group on the role of national parliaments, and also in order to consider how to strengthen the collective role of national parliaments through COSAC. So we need to explore together forms that should be more and more advanced for an active and constructive involvement of national parliaments in the European lawmaking process. And we can draw inspiration on how to proceed from the more veritably political moments we had within COSAC, which is the drafting of the contributions of plenary meetings, where the discussions are held and where we have debates which are very similar to the debates we have in our parliaments. These are concretely political moments that should be enhanced, and we should make the best of them, because our visibility should be translated into the production of documents that provide the individual positions of national parliaments. And then I believe it is important to give continuity to the moments, to the meetings we had within COSAC with the European commissioners responsible for the various portfolios. These exchanges of views are always fruitful for the European decision, which is enriched through the national contributions, and also for our national decision-making process, which will be better informed on what's going on within the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your support. Indeed, we need to increase the visibility of our work. That is a key point in my view. And rest assured, we have planned to pursue the hearings of commissioners during our presidency at COSAC. I now give the floor to Madam Ria Oomen-Richten from the Upper House of the Netherlands.
Merci beaucoup. I am absolutely very grateful for the efforts of Madame Télé and also Mr. Rapin and the Troika to address COSAC's working methods. I think it wasn't an easy task. But if I look at the functioning of COSAC, and it is already mentioned by some of my colleagues, it is not as flexible as we want to see it. And that is for sure also caused by the large number of participants. With the working groups, which we want, COSAC can be a forum which has more chances to be flexible. What we want as Dutch is that COSAC is a forum in which information and best practices can be shared. And this initiative can help to it because it can give a breakout of the sessions. And it looks for us as a very suitable forum in which we can discuss the topical issues. I have two remarks. If this initiative is adopted, I think it would be good to see a certain continuity in the topics throughout the next presidencies. The current topics, the role of national parliaments in the EU and European values, would certainly lend themselves to this. And second, the proposal states that one of the purposes is to make proposals to COSAC members that could later be incorporated into contributions submitted to COSAC. Does that mean, that's my question, that working groups would also have the task to prepare the conclusions and the contribution of the plenary COSAC or parts of the text? Please, I would like to have an answer on it. For the rest, I'm absolutely grateful to adopt the text, and for further reorganizing of COSAC, we are ready to work with you. Thanks a lot.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for your support. As regards continuity, of course, that would be desirable, but we cannot commit the upcoming presidencies. It's up to the Czech and Swedish presidencies to decide whether they wish to pursue this or not. But indeed, continuity in the long term is desirable. We can make proposals to the plenary, but it's up to the plenary to then incorporate our proposals into the contributions. It will not be up to us to decide or to make them compulsory. But I hope that the outcome of our work will be reflected by the plenary in the contributions. I now give the floor to Madame Atilda Gjurnaj from the Albanian Parliament.
Estimated Chair, estimated colleagues, first of all, I want to wish a lot of success to the French Presidency. And the meeting of COSAC in this moment, that is very important. And I hope that the enlargement and clear EU perspective of Western Balkan countries, it would remain in the priorities of EU policies, and unblocking decisions could happen during the presidency of France. And of course that it would be very good that this perspective of Western Balkan countries for EU could be discussed even in the working groups. I consider that the establishment of the working groups by COSAC, not just only me personally, but us as Albania, us as Committee for European Integration Affairs, that these working groups can be excellent platform to include the Western Balkan countries to be part of the discussions and have a focus on recovery, strength and sense of belonging, but also on the future of Europe or Western Balkan countries' perspective to EU. I strongly believe that Albania will greatly benefit and contribute from the participation in COSAC working groups, which can effectively contribute to build bridges of communications and trust between our region and EU on important issues such as rule of law, fight against corruption, fight against organized crime, human rights, but even on the target groups that are very important on this process, such as youth and the women. I believe that with more inclusivity we can better address issues that should have a shared vision and goals in which we as Albanians remain faithfully committed for the undoubtful EU path perspective. Thanks.
Merci, chers collègues.
Thank you, dear colleague, for that proposal, which I fully understand. However, we have not yet had a discussion about it amongst ourselves as to what the status of those who are not yet member states would be in these working groups. But in any case, I take due note of this question, and I'm now going to give the floor to my colleague, Jean-François Rapin, who will provide some answers to your different remarks and requests. Dear colleagues, first and foremost, thank you very much for all of those that shared messages of support, and also to those who will be providing those messages of support to this initiative. The speeches of this morning have been very encouraging because we see that you know what is required to go further than what we proposed. We have an ambitious proposal. Work has been done for the green card scheme, but there will be perhaps the creation of a third working group, the integration, incorporation that you mentioned, and so there is a shared will to see not the reform of COSAC, but perhaps a change in which the way that COSAC can express itself. Now, I have several answers. I think that as it relates to the decision that will be taken, I think it will be done fairly quickly. As it relates to integration, I think that we need to envisage this in two stages. First of all, we need a decision made by the members of the working groups to see whether we will further the enlargement of these groups. And then the second point pertaining to the creation of a third working group. I did think about this when Denmark proposed this. So I thought that in the end, what we want to do, we want to perhaps not start off small. Perhaps you want to start off bigger at the outset over a limited period of time. But I do see that there is the will to create a third working group, which will be important for the next part of our work. I think it was Danuta who proposed this, but we cannot hope for continuity. It is our ambition, it's our desire, but as I said earlier on in my remarks, we cannot impose upon future presidencies the needs to continue to work on these questions. I think that the work that we'll do over the next 6 months and the ambition that we will carry will help the following presidency decide upon their working groups. But you can count on our energy to ensure that we create good values for the smooth operation of these working groups. We have received from the delegation of the European Commission presided by Ursula von der Leyen here at the Senate. This was something that was mentioned just last Friday in this very forum, or I should say downstairs. And from the Commission, I see that there is a will, perhaps a stronger will, to see COSAC go further in the proposals that it's currently making, particularly as it relates to democracy. I think that the Commission has understood something very clearly. The link between national parliaments and European parliaments and themselves is created through us, through elected officials, those who go out on campaigns, who are close to citizens and who can carry the messages, compared to a very top-down vision that the Commission can sometimes have. So those are my thoughts. Thank you very much. It's very nice to hear that you have so much ambition, but I suggest that perhaps we can perhaps make a more humble beginning so that we can carry out the ambition of the working groups and their working methods. Thank you very much. I think everyone has been able to speak about the proposals of the creation of these groups. As I mentioned at the beginning of the Union, the rule of procedure of COSAC provides for the possibility to make this decision by way of a vote with an absolute majority of the chairs. I think it's more in line with the spirit of the works of COSAC to try to reach a consensus without having a formal vote. In this respect, we hope that we have answered the questions raised, and if there is no formal opposition to the proposal of the creation of these two working groups, I would ask you, and I would ask the conference, do any of the delegations oppose the creation of the working groups in line with the terms proposed?
Personne en ligne a demandé la parole.
No one online has requested the floor, no one here in the chamber, so thank you very much to all of you. There was no opposition, therefore we can consider that the COSAC, the Conference of the Parliamentary Committees for European Affairs, has decided by consensus to create the two working groups that have been proposed, and this is a first. Thank you very much, and you can count on Jean-François Rapin and myself to share your proposals for the establishment of a working timeline. Thank you very much. All that remains now is for me to invite you to the buffet hall for our lunch, and we will be suspending our work until 2:15 p.m. Thank you very much.